The night was drenched in silver, the moon swollen and watchful above the Black Fang territory. Cries of battle echoed through the forest. Wolves snarling, blades clashing, a pack tearing itself apart. At the heart of the chaos, she ran. The Luna, cloak torn and face pale with terror, carried a secret she had guarded with her life. Her breath came ragged, her wolf screaming within her to fight, to survive, to protect what was hers. But betrayal had already cut too deep. A trusted beta had turned, and the alpha she loved was too far away to hear her final plea. "Run," she whispered to the unborn bond inside her, hand clutching her stomach, "live where I cannot." Behind her, shadows closed in. Fangs tore through the night, and her scream was lost to the wind. By dawn, the clearing was nothing but blood. Soaked silence, the alpha returned too late, cradling ashes where his Luna had once stood. His roar broke the forest in half, shaking both earth and spirit. Yet even as grief hollowed him, the pack whispered in secret, no body was ever found, and in hushed tones, long after the alpha turned cold and ruthless, a story lingered, of a Luna who had vanished, a Luna who might yet return. Years later, the pack house no longer carried songs of celebration. Shadows lingered in its halls, and those who served within kept their heads bowed. Among them was a girl no one truly saw. She moved like a ghost, her back bent beneath buckets of water, hands raw from scrubbing stone floors. Her hair, once radiant, was dulled with ash, and the scent she carried was muted, hidden deep beneath layers of submission. No one guessed who she was, no one dared. She slept in the Omega quarters, dark, cramped spaces where wolves deemed unworthy were kept. There, she became nothing, because nothing was safe. But at night, when the others whispered and slept, her wolf stirred against her ribs, restless, aching. She would sit by the small window, watching the moon climb high. "Once you were more, once you belonged to the stars," her wolf whispered, and she shushed it, pressing trembling hands to her chest. Quiet, she breathed, "If anyone hears, they'll know." For years she had endured, swallowing the fire of her bloodline, hiding the mark burned faintly into her skin. To survive, she scrubbed and bowed, endured insults that cut sharper than whips. Omegas had no voice. And she was the lowest among them. Still, there were nights when memory clawed too fiercely. The echo of her alpha's voice, tender once, before it hardened with grief. The flash of betrayal, the night everything was ripped away. She shut her eyes, forcing herself to breathe. That girl was gone, that Luna had died, only. Sometimes she wondered if the bond truly could die. Outside, a howl rose long and commanding, spiraling from the alpha returning from another hunt. The pack shivered. Even buried in the Omega quarters, she felt it. The sound rippled down her spine like fire, and her wolf surged up, frantic. Her breath caught. "No," she begged silently. "He can't know. He mustn't ever know." And yet, as the echo of his howl faded, she pressed her hand to her chest. The bond was still there, silent, broken, but alive, and waiting. The air shifted the moment he returned. The great doors of the pack house opened with a thundering echo, and silence rippled through the corridors. Warriors bowed low, servants shrank against the walls. His presence filled the space before he even stepped inside. The alpha had come home. He was taller than memory, his shoulders carrying the weight of too many battles. His dark hair falling in loose strands across a scar that cut from temple to jaw. The mark of survival, the mark of loss. His eyes ice and steel, swept over the room, sharp as a blade. Wolves who dared meet that gaze quickly dropped their heads, their throats exposed in instinctive submission. She stayed hidden in the corner, clutching the bucket in her hands, praying he would not look her way. Yet even in shadow, her chest burned with the familiar pull. The bond stirred like a dormant ember, flaring painfully alive. He paused. Just for a heartbeat, his gaze flicked toward her, her breath hitched. Her wolf pressed against her ribs, whispering, "Mate," but his eyes slid past her as if she were nothing, less than nothing, just an Omega girl bent over chores. Relief washed through her in a cold, stinging rush. And yet underneath it there was pain, the kind that gnawed at bone and soul. He strode forward, his voice cutting through the stillness. "Where is the council? Waiting, Alpha?" One of the betas replied quickly, bowing. He gave a curt nod, then swept past, his scent trailing like smoke and pine, making her knees weaken. Every step of his boots on the stone floor echoed in her veins, shaking loose 1,000 memories she had buried. She lowered her head, forcing her hands to keep scrubbing, even as the water sloshed over the edges of her bucket. She dared not look up again. Still, she felt it, the weight of his presence lingering longer than it should have, as though some part of him had noticed her after all. But that was impossible. He was Alpha, she was nothing, and the only bond between them was the ghost of one he had long forgotten. Or so she told herself. In the great hall above, his voice rumbled low, commanding, filled with the cold authority that kept the pack in line. Yet beneath its edge was something else, something he himself refused to name, something restless, something searching, and in the shadows below, the Omega girl pressed her trembling hands together and whispered to herself, "He must never know who I am." But already the bond had begun to stir too strongly to stay buried. The night of the gathering came with a heavy sky, the moon swollen and bright above the clearing. Wolves gathered in their finest attire, warriors lining the edges, Omegas whispering at the fringes. Tonight, the Alpha would name his Luna. She tried to keep to the shadows, her hands folded tightly in front of her, her heart hammering so loudly she was certain others could hear it. The very idea of standing beneath that light terrified her. But Omegas were summoned too, silent servants, there to witness, never to be chosen. The Alpha stood at the center, his form bathed in silver light. He looked every bit the legend his pack feared, tall, unyielding, his aura rolling through the crowd like thunder. His scar caught the moonlight, making him appear carved from stone. All who seek the honor of Luna will step forward, the council elder announced. Gasps rippled as daughters of noble houses approached, their silken dresses shimmering, their eyes hungry for his claim. They bowed, offering themselves with grace and ambition, and then, her wolf betrayed her. The bond surged violently, a pull she couldn't fight. Her knees buckled, and she stumbled into the open, the crowd parting as if fate itself shoved her forward. The moment his eyes locked on hers, the world seemed to shatter. His chest rose sharply, nostrils flaring. His wolf growled inside him, fierce, desperate, mate. Whispers broke through the crowd, the Omega, impossible. The Alpha's mate, her lips parted, breath trembling. She had never felt it so strongly, the heat of destiny wrapping around her like chains. But the Alpha's expression froze. The bond in his eyes burned, then hardened to ice. He stepped forward, his voice cold enough to slice the night in half. "No." The word cut her deeper than any blade. "I reject this," he growled, his tone fierce enough to silence the murmurs. His gaze never wavered, even as his wolf snarled against his denial. "I will not accept an Omega as my Luna." Gasps echoed, sharp and cruel. The noble daughters smirked. The Omegas lowered their eyes, ashamed by the spectacle. Her chest ached as though claws had raked through her heart. The rejection seared into her bones, her wolf keening inside her, torn apart. Still, she forced herself to bow her head, to swallow the sob clawing at her throat. She turned and stumbled back toward the shadows, her vision blurred with tears she refused to let fall in front of them. Behind her, the Alpha stood rigid, fists clenched, jaw tight. His wolf howled in protest inside him, but his pride would not bend, and the bond between them cracked, bleeding fire into both their souls. The corridors of the pack house swallowed her whole as she fled the gathering. Torches flickered against stone walls, the echoes of laughter and whispers chasing her down like wolves at her heels. Her chest burned. Every breath was jagged, every step heavier than the last. The rejection was more than words. It was a tearing, a violent severing of a bond she had once dreamed of. By the time she reached the Omega quarters, she collapsed against the narrow cot, curling in on herself. Her wolf howled inside, broken and raw, its anguish filling her head until she thought she might shatter apart. Mate, ours, rejected. She pressed her palms hard against her ears, as if she could block out the grief echoing within. "Stop," she whispered hoarsely. "Please stop. We knew this would happen. We knew." But knowing did not soften the pain. Her body trembled, sweat slick on her skin, and when she pulled at the edge of her sleeve, the mark revealed itself, faint, hidden, but still glowing with a soft, silvery pulse. A scar not from injury, but from legacy. She stared at it, heart-pounding. That ancient mark had been etched into her flesh since birth, proof of a lineage long thought lost, proof of what she once was. Proof she could never reveal. Tears slipped silently down her cheeks, if he knew. She shook her head violently, no. She had survived this long only by becoming invisible, by bowing, by breaking, by hiding in plain sight. Her wolf whimpered, a sound of both longing and rage, and still her chest ached with memory, his eyes locking with hers under the moon, the split, second recognition before it turned to ice. That flicker of fate had been real. The bond was alive, undeniable, even as he rejected it, but his words had been clear. He wanted no Luna of Omega blood. She wiped her tears, forcing herself to stillness. Then he'll never know the truth. She vowed to the empty room. No one will. Yet the mark on her skin glowed faintly in the moonlight, betraying her silent promise, a scar, or a prophecy waiting to resurface. And though she pressed her sleeve over it, burying it from sight, the truth pulsed beneath, restless, refusing to be silenced forever. The next morning dawned gray, heavy clouds pressing low over the packlands. She forced herself into routine, scrubbing stone floors, carrying trays of food, fetching water for warriors who never bothered to thank her. Each movement was mechanical, a mask for the storm inside, but word of the Alpha's rejection had already spread. Omegas whispered behind their hands, warriors smirked when she passed. To them, she was the joke of the night, the worthless servant who thought herself worthy of a mate bond. By midday, it grew worse. A baiter, Ronan, brutish and cruel, drunk on his minor authority, cornered her near the stables, his lip curled as he blocked her path, eyes gleaming with scorn. So, he sneered, pressing close enough that she smelled the stench of ale on his breath. The little Omega thought she was destined for the Alpha. How sweet. Maybe you should try with someone more appropriate. Her chest tightened. She gripped the bucket in her hands like a shield, but her voice stayed low. Move. Oh, she speaks. He mocked laughter sharp. His hand shot out, gripping her arm hard enough to bruise. Maybe you need reminding of your place. Her wolf snarled inside her, but fear anchored her feet. She could not risk exposing who she truly was, not here, not now. Then a growl split the air, deep, savage. Ronan froze, his grip loosening as the Alpha's shadow fell over them. Release her, the Alpha commanded, voice low but lethal. His eyes burned like storms as they fixed on Ronan's hand. The beta stammered, bowing his head. Alpha, I said release her. The command struck like lightning. Ronan dropped her arm as if scorched, backing away quickly, tail between his legs. Silence stretched after he fled, broken only by the Alpha's heavy breathing. His gaze lingered on her, far longer than it should have. Her arm still tingled where Ronan had touched, but now the fire came from somewhere else entirely. From the bond sparking between her and the Alpha, undeniable and fierce. Are you hurt? His voice was rough, gritted as though dragged from him against his will. She shook her head quickly, eyes down, fighting the tremor in her voice. No, Alpha. The word tasted bitter. The distance it placed between them was safer than the truth. His jaw tightened as though her submission unsettled him. For a moment, something almost soft flickered in his eyes, something he quickly buried beneath steel. Stay away from him, he muttered, turning sharply. But as he strode off, she felt the invisible tether of the bond stretch taut between them, pulling tighter, more dangerous. Her wolf whispered fiercely, he can't stay away. Not forever. Rain slicked the training grounds. The earth churned into mud beneath the pounding of warrior boots. The pack's younger wolves sparred under the Alpha's watchful eye, their growls and shouts echoing across the field. She lingered at the edge, unseen among the Omegas assigned to gather discarded weapons. Her hands moved mechanically, collecting blades, dragging heavy shields, but her mind remained far from the task. Ever since yesterday's confrontation, her arms still tingled where he had stepped between her and Ronan. She tried to shake the thought, but his presence was everywhere. The Alpha was impossible to ignore, each command from his lips cutting through the damp air, each movement a reminder of the wolf bound to hers. Then it happened. A warrior lunged recklessly during sparring, sending a blade clattering across the mud. It spun wildly, landing at her feet. She bent to grab it, but the slick ground betrayed her. She slipped, tumbling hard, her sleeve tearing against the blade's edge, and with that tear, her scent broke free. Raw, untamed, the scent of a true mate, long, hidden beneath layers of submission, now flooding the air like wildfire. The world seemed to still. His head snapped toward her instantly, eyes flashing silver. His chest rose sharply, nostrils flaring. His wolf surged to the surface with a snarl, fierce and possessive. Mine. The word echoed not from his lips, but from the bond between them, vibrating through her very bones. Her wolf shivered in answer, claws straining against her skin, desperate to leap into his arms. She staggered back, clutching her sleeve to smother the scent, but it was too late. His steps were already eating the distance between them, his gaze locked on her like prey or salvation. "Stop," she whispered under her breath, voice trembling. "Don't come closer." But he didn't stop. His hand caught her wrist, his grip firm, electric heat shooting through both of them. The connection flared, every nerve alive, every heartbeat sinking, as though the moon itself commanded it. Her lips parted, words caught in her throat. He looked down at her, and for a fleeting second, she saw not the cold alpha, but the man beneath. The wolf who remembered loss, who now stood before what he thought he'd never have again. Then his jaw clenched. He released her wrist as if burned, stepping back, his eyes shadowed. No. He growled to himself, low and guttural. This can't be. And yet, even as he turned away, his wolf howled inside him, unrelenting. Because denial could not erase destiny. The pack house buzzed with restless energy that evening. The scent from earlier still lingered, faint but undeniable, weaving through the halls like a forbidden secret. Whispers had begun among the warriors, snatches of speculation about the Omega girl who carried something different. She kept her head low, tray balanced in her hands as she served the evening meal. Every step was agony, her skin still burning where his fingers had gripped her wrist. She could almost feel the bond thrumming there like a living chain tugging at her heart, but she knew better than to meet anyone's eyes, especially his. From his place at the high table, the alpha sat rigid, unmoving. His plate remained untouched, his gaze dark as storm clouds. To anyone else, he looked cold, calculating, his usual self, but she could feel the storm beneath. His wolf was clawing at him, demanding recognition, demanding acceptance. When the tray finally emptied, she turned to leave the hall. That's when she heard it. "Did you see it?" whispered one of the elder Omegas, her voice quivering, the mark, on her arm, the same as SHH. Another hissed quickly. But the words had already sunk into the room like poison. The alpha's head tilted slightly, his wolf catching every syllable. His gaze locked on her retreating figure. Later, as the moon rose high, she slipped into the small washing quarters. Alone at last, she rolled up her sleeve. The torn fabric revealed a faint, crescent-shaped birthmark glowing just beneath her skin, silver in the moonlight. It pulsed with quiet power, a mark she had hidden her entire life. The Luna's mark, her chest tightened. It wasn't just a reminder of who she truly was, it was proof. Proof of the bloodline she carried, proof of why she could never stay here in plain sight. A sharp inhale sounded behind her. She spun, heart slamming in her chest. He stood in the doorway, the alpha. His eyes were fixed on her arm, silver blazing with recognition. His wolf roared through the bond, demanding he claim her, demanding he never let her go. Her breath hitched, and she pulled her sleeve down desperately, shaking her head. "You don't understand enough," he growled, stepping into the room. His presence filled the space, suffocating yet magnetic. "I know what I saw." Her back pressed against the cold stone wall, her pulse wild. The secret she had fought so hard to bury was bleeding into the open, and there was no way to hide it now. The past she had fled was clawing back into the present. And for the first time, she wondered if destiny had finally caught her. The moon hung heavy above the pack grounds, silver light spilling over stone and timber. The feast had long ended, but its echoes lingered in the restless shuffle of wolves moving through the halls. And in the shadows, eyes watched. Selene hurried across the courtyard with a basket of linens clutched to her chest. The Alpha's gaze had burned her all night, and though he'd spoken no word of what he'd seen, she knew the danger. Secrets didn't stay buried forever, but she wasn't the only one who noticed. From the far side of the courtyard, Ronan's sister, Kara, the raven-haired beauty who had long coveted the title of Luna, stood with her arms crossed, a smirk curving her lips. Her amber eyes glittered with spite as they followed Selene's every movement. "She thinks she can walk in here and take what's mine," Kara murmured under her breath, voice sharp as glass. One of her friends scoffed. "She's just an Omega." "An Omega," Kara repeated, but the word tasted bitter. "Then why does the Alpha watch her like that? Why does he look at her the way he never looks at me?" Jealousy burned in her chest like wildfire. For years she had positioned herself, weaving schemes and favors, certain she would rise as Luna, but all it took was one quiet girl with downcast eyes to unravel everything. No, she would not allow it. That night, as Selene carried water to the washing quarters, Kara stepped into her path. The basket tumbled from Selene's arms, linen spilling across the dirt. "Kara," Selene whispered, bowing her head quickly. I didn't see you there." Kara's hand shot out, seizing her chin, forcing her gaze upward. "Oh, but I see you, little mouse. The Alpha sees you too, and I don't like it." Selene winced at the sharp grip, but said nothing. Her silence only seemed to enrage Kara further. "You think you can hide behind that meek act? I know girls like you. You'll do anything for a taste of power, but you'll learn." Kara's voice lowered, venomous. "Wolves like me don't share." A flash of movement. Kara shoved her hard. Selene staggered back, hitting the stone wall with a gasp. Before Kara could strike again, a growl ripped through the night. Deep, feral, dangerous, the Alpha. He stood in the shadows, eyes glowing silver, every muscle coiled with fury. Kara froze, her face paling, but his gaze wasn't on her. It was locked on Selene, shaken, clutching the wall, breath ragged. "Leave her," he commanded, voice low but edged with lethal promise. For the first time, Kara faltered. But in her chest, jealousy hardened into something sharper. This wasn't over. The courtyard was silent after Kara fled, her footsteps swallowed by the night. But Selene could still feel the tremor in her bones, her shoulder throbbing where stone had met flesh. The Alpha didn't move at first. He stood just beyond the torchlight, his presence vast, his eyes catching the moon like shards of silver. "You should not let her touch you," he said finally, voice deep, controlled. "You should not let anyone treat you that way." Selene lowered her gaze, her words tumbling softly. "I'm Omega, that's what they do." Something dangerous flickered across his face. "Not while I breathe." She swallowed, throat dry. Every instinct told her to flee, to keep the walls around her heart unbroken, but the bond pulsed like a secret heartbeat between them. It dragged her closer to him with every passing second. "Why do you care?" she whispered. The question hung heavy in the cool night air. His jaw clenched as though the answer itself was a battle. He stepped closer, his scent of pine and steel curling around her, overwhelming, undeniable. "I don't," he said, but his voice cracked on the lie. His hand brushed her arm before he could stop himself, fingers grazing the bruise Kara had left. The bond surged at the contact. Heat flared in her veins, and his wolf rumbled low in his chest. Selene's breath caught. Her heart wanted to believe, to yield, to confess, but the memory of his rejection burned too deep. "You said I was nothing, that I wasn't your mate." His eyes darkened, as though the words struck him harder than any blade. "I was wrong." The admission slipped past his defenses, raw and unguarded. For a moment silence stretched between them, thick with all the truths they had yet to speak. Selene's lips parted, the secret pressed against her tongue, the scar, the mark, the truth of who she was. But fear twisted it into silence. If she told him, the world she had built in the shadows would collapse. Instead, she whispered fragments, the ghosts of her past slipping out. "I wasn't always here. I belonged to another place, another life, and it was taken from me." His head snapped toward her, silver eyes blazing. What life? Her heart hammered, her wolf clawing for release, but before she could answer, a horn blared across the pack grounds. Shouts echoed from the watchtowers. Intruders, the moment shattered, his gaze lingered on her a heartbeat longer, fierce and questioning, then he turned toward the threat. "Stay inside," he ordered, voice like thunder. "We'll finish this later." Selene pressed against the wall, her secret burning hotter than ever. And for the first time, she wondered if later would destroy them both. The intruders were driven back before dawn, their howls fading into the forest. Blood stained the training yard, and the pack huddled close, nerves raw and whispers thick with unease. Selene stood among the Omegas, her hands trembling as she tied bandages. Every cry, every wound reminded her of a truth she'd buried. She had once been more than this. She had once been meant to lead. But Kara had seen the flicker of her secret the night before, and jealousy sharpened into cruelty. The next evening, when the Alpha summoned the pack to the great hall, Kara struck. She stepped into the circle of firelight with a smirk on her lips and venom in her voice. "Do you want to know," Kara said sweetly, her amber eyes sweeping the gathered wolves, "why the Alpha looks at the Omega girl as if she's more than dirt under his boot?" A murmur rippled through the hall. All eyes turned toward Selene. Kara's smile widened. "It's because she's a liar. She isn't who she pretends to be. She carries scars she cannot explain, marks that don't belong to an Omega. Tell them, Selene. Tell them who you really are." Selene's breath seized in her chest. The basket slipped from her fingers, herbs spilling across the stone floor. Her secret, the one she had bled to keep hidden, dangled on the edge of exposure. The Alpha rose slowly from his seat, power rolling off him in waves, but his gaze was fixed on her, not Kara. "Is it true?" His voice was quiet, but it cut through the hall like a blade. Selene's lips parted, but no sound came. The mark on her shoulder seemed to burn beneath her clothes, as though the truth itself had been branded into her skin. Kara's voice lashed again. "She's no Luna. She's nothing but a fraud who will bring ruin on us all." The pack growled, the hall alive with doubt and accusation. For every sympathetic glance, there were 10 more filled with suspicion. Selene's chest constricted, her wolf howling in despair. This was her nightmare, the darkness that chased her every waking hour, now clawing into daylight. The Alpha's fists clenched at his sides, his jaw tight. The bond between them vibrated, pulling taut like a string on the edge of breaking. And with the pack watching, waiting, demanding, he had no choice but to speak. "Enough." He thundered, his voice echoing through stone. His eyes locked on Selene's fierce torn. "If she carries a secret, it will be revealed here, before me, before all." Selene's knees weakened, the pack pressed closer, their judgment thick in the air. She could no longer run. The hall crackled with tension, the firelight throwing long shadows against stone walls. The pack pressed in, eyes gleaming, ears straining for the Alpha's judgment. Selene's breath came shallow, her heart hammering against the weight of silence. The Alpha stood at the center, towering, his presence radiating command. Yet for the first time, doubt flickered across his face, not for himself, but for the girl who stood trembling under every accusing gaze. Kara's voice cut the air like a dagger. "Choose wisely, Alpha. Claim an Omega liar as your Luna, and you doom us all." Selene flinched. Shame burned her skin, but beneath it, something fiercer stirred. Her wolf, restless, aching to break free. She clenched her fists, fighting to hold herself small, invisible. The Alpha's silver eyes locked on her. The bond thrummed between them, undeniable, electric. He had spent nights resisting, days pushing her away, but every instinct screamed what his pride had long denied. "She is mine," he said at last, his voice carrying over the murmurs, low but absolute. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Kara's face went pale, then flushed crimson with fury. "You would claim her over me, over every daughter of the high, born lines." His growl silenced her. "The bond does not lie. Fate chose her, and I will not defy it." The words slammed into Selene like a storm. She staggered, torn between disbelief and a wild rush of relief. After so long, someone, he had seen her, claimed her not as an Omega, but as his mate. But the pack was not so easily swayed. Voices rose angry and fearful. She's a fraud. Where is her proof? She'll bring ruin. The Alpha's power surged, cutting through the chaos. His wolf roared beneath his skin, demanding submission. Silence, the hall stilled, though unease still curled like smoke. His gaze returned to Selene, fierce, unwavering. If she carries scars, if she carries secrets, they are hers. And if anyone dares lay a hand on her again, they will answer to me. Selene's lips parted, but no words formed. Tears stung her eyes, not from weakness, but from the unbearable weight of being defended, of being seen. Kura trembled with rage, her nails biting into her palms, but in her eyes burned a vow. This was far from over. The Alpha reached for Selene's hand, his grip steady, grounding. The hall still buzzed with dissent, but in that single touch, the tide of fate shifted. For the first time, she wasn't just an Omega in hiding. She was the Alpha's chosen. The night of reckoning came swiftly. Kara's schemes had not ended with humiliation. She rallied those who doubted, whispering poison into ears already restless with fear. And when the moon rose high, the pack was divided, half loyal to their Alpha, half demanding proof that Selene was more than a shadow draped in Omega rags. The trial flared into chaos. Voices clashed, wolves snapped at one another, and Kara stood at the heart of it, triumphant. "Show them," she cried, pointing a trembling hand at Selene. "If you are truly Luna, bear your lies for all to see." Selene's chest tightened, breath trapped. She had hidden for so long, covered her scar beneath fabric and fear. To reveal it now meant surrendering every shield she had clung to. The Alpha's hand brushed hers, strong, steady. His silver eyes met hers, not demanding, not commanding, only asking, "Trust me." With trembling fingers, Selene pulled the neckline of her tunic aside. Gasps echoed through the hall. Across her shoulder, etched like fire into her skin, lay the mark of the moon goddess. An ancient sigil of Luna's bloodline. The room erupted. Some fell to their knees, whispering prayers. Others recoiled, stunned. Kara's face drained of color, her triumph shattering into horror. She was never yours to scorn. The Alpha growled, stepping forward, his power rippling like a storm. "She is mine. She has always been mine." Kara's fury broke. With a snarl, she lunged, claws unsheathing, but the Alpha was faster. He caught her mid. Strike, his wolf roaring, his strength an unbreakable wall. Enough. He thundered, "This ends now." Kara crumpled beneath his power, her rebellion silenced. The hall fell still, every wolf bowing instinctively under the weight of his command. Selene stood trembling, the scar bared, the mark burning bright beneath the firelight. For years she had been nothing but shadow and silence. Now the truth blazed for all to see. The Alpha turned, his gaze softening as it found her. He lowered himself slowly, one knee touching stone, not in weakness, but in reverence. "My Luna," he said, voice rough with awe. "My lost one, return to me." Her throat closed with tears. She had never dreamed of this moment, never believed it could exist. Yet here he was, her Alpha, her mate, kneeling before her not as a master to a servant, but as a man to the woman destiny had bound him to. The pack, one by one, bent low, heads bowed, voices murmured their acceptance. Selene lifted her chin, breath catching on the weight of it all. She was no longer the girl who scrubbed floors in the dark. She was Luna, claimed, chosen, unbroken. The Alpha rose, drawing her against him, and as his lips brushed hers beneath the gaze of the moon, the bond sealed, radiant and whole. And for the first time, she felt not just seen, but home.